met with the king of Saudi Arabia in Egypt, and they had a one-day meeting. And as a result of the meeting, the Saudi Arabia agreed to make America special deals with America with oil, and that America would protect Saudi Arabia. That's what the official history says. But also connected with it, President Roosevelt agreed to the king that he would not allow a Jewish state in Palestine. So that was really, I see it as I look at history. In my mind, there's no doubt that President Roosevelt traded what God's prophetic plan was, and America was a part of it, for the creation of the nation of Israel. He traded that for oil.
And what happened shortly after he did that?
Well, Sid, there was a letter from the king of Saudi Arabia to Roosevelt articulating that meeting that took place in February. This letter was dated March 10th, 1945, and it said incredible things about the Jewish people. He actually likened them to the Nazis. He said that a state of Israel in Palestine would be like creating a Nazi state.
And his life was taken how much after that letter?
Well, what happened was Roosevelt responded to the king and said, no, America is never going to allow a Jewish state in Palestine. That letter was dated April 5th, 1945. Roosevelt died on April 12th, exactly 1 week later, 1945.
And guess who took his place? A president, his name was Truman, whose mother taught him from a child to love the Jew in Israel. And had Harry Truman not been president, perhaps Israel would not have come into existence.
As I study history and I understand the mood of America, I think that Harry Truman is probably the only man that would have gone through with the recognition of the State of Israel.
Okay, when we come back, America's fatal mistake.
We'll be right back to It's Supernatural.
The Supernatural Mentoring Kit is finally here.
We now return to It's Supernatural.
Hello, Sid Roth here with John McTernan. And by the way, are you in studio audience? Are you enjoying this teaching? Yeah. Me too. Are you enjoying this teaching? I have to tell you, there are facts I'm learning that I never, ever knew. For instance, God began to show John McTernan there was a definite correlation between America doing something against Israel and what the world calls natural disasters. Stock market going down, earthquakes, tornadoes, and for instance, tell me about what happened to President Bush Sr.'s home and why.
Well, this is an amazing story. President Bush Sr., after the first Gulf War, decided he wanted a comprehensive Middle East peace plan. And he centered that around dividing the land of Israel, about creating a Palestinian state and dividing Jerusalem, which is in gross violation of God's word. There are many scriptures warning not to divide the land. God will judge.
Paraphrase Joel 3 as one of these scriptures.
Yeah, Joel 3 verse 2 specifically says that God will judge for hurting the Jewish people and for dividing the land, that he specifically will judge for doing that.
Isn't it amazing? It specifically says in Joel chapter 3 that nations will be judged, and it says one specific sin, dividing up my land. In other words, God says that land is not the Jewish people's, that land is not the Palestinians. He says, my land. That's his land. Get it? Now, he has arranged a long-term lease with the Jewish people on his land.
That's
and,
right.
and Psalm 105, verse 8 to 11 says, I, God, have leased the land. He doesn't say lease. I've given the land to the Jewish people, and he has three adjectives. It must be important when he says it three different ways. Forever, everlasting, and 1,000 generations. Okay, now let's go back to Bush Sr., who violates Joel 3 and a number of other scriptures. What happened?
It's October 30th, 1991. President Bush is in Madrid, Spain, starting officially what we call now the Madrid peace process. And the centerpiece of that is dividing the land of Israel. He's giving the speech to do this. While he's doing it, now, this is not a day before or a day after or a week before or a week after. On the very day he's in Madrid giving the speech, a bizarre storm had formed in the North Atlantic. And by bizarre, I mean it was a hurricane. When's the last time you've heard a hurricane October 30th forming off Nova Scotia? It came the wrong way. It's called a retrograde storm. Normally, weather patterns are from west to east and from south to north. This storm went from east to west and from north to south, retrograde. It happens, in my lifetime, it's the only time I've ever heard it. And according to meteorologists, it happens once every 200-300 years. And what it did was it raked the east coast of the United States, and it sent gigantic waves. And President Bush has a home in Kennebunkport, Maine, on the coast, and it's a neck of land that sticks out in the Atlantic. While he's giving this speech, this storm, which became known as the Perfect Storm, was a best-selling book by it.
And it was called the Perfect Storm because all these variables had to happen for something to happen that just can't happen. And that's why they said, they made a movie and a book, The Perfect Storm. Go ahead.
So on the very day, and I'm emphasizing this, on the very day, the Perfect Storm sent 30-foot waves against his home and destroyed it. When he came back from Madrid, Spain, he had to go to Kennebunkport. He spent 2 days overseeing the reconstruction of his home.
Yes, but there are people watching us right now and say, colossal coincidence. What would you say to that?
That's legitimate.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, as I have documented, I have over 100 now of the worst disasters that hit America. So I would say to this person, if I could show you 10 of the 10 greatest same-day events, would you believe it? The person says no. If I showed you the 20 greatest same-day events, I can go 30, 40, 50, 100.
In other words, you showed me the FEMA,
yes.
The website,
yes.
which anyone can go on.
Right.
And the top 10 natural disasters to hit America, the top 10 economic disasters to hit America within how long from the disaster to doing something negative with Israel and the disaster, how long did it take, and how many were connected with doing something against Israel?
Well, usually it's the same day or within 24 hours afterwards. It's usually a same-day event. And the headlines...
How many of the top 10?
Oh, 9 out of the top 10.
Speaking about dividing the land, you have a very interesting thing. This was the Madrid Peace Conference. And then there is something that sounds similar, the Madra Fault. Explain.
It is very unique. It's the Madrid peace process to divide the land of Israel. Right in the middle of the United States, running roughly from Memphis up into Missouri, and then it splits, is the New Madrid Fault. It's the same spelling. And it runs right in the middle of the United States. And the greatest earthquakes to ever hit the United States hit in 1811 and 1812 with the New Madrid Fault, and it literally sent the Mississippi River running backwards. If that hit today, Sid, it would be right in the middle of it would cut the United States right in half, and you would have bridges down, you'd have power lines down, you'd have gas lines down, you'd have Memphis to St. Louis down, over to Cincinnati. It would be devastating to the United States.
Could it be that God is saying, you divide my land, United States, and I will divide your land? Don't go away. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back to It's Supernatural.
Many viewers report testimonies of miracles, signs and wonders, and healings as a result of watching It's Supernatural.
I'm 14 years old. This morning, I watched It's Supernatural about angels, and warmth poured on me. It made me cry.
God healed me of stage 4 inoperable cancer. It is a real blessing to have It's Supernatural to watch each week.
If you've been touched through watching It's Supernatural, share your testimony at sidroth.org/praise.
We now return to It's Supernatural.
Hello, Sid Roth here with John McTernan. You don't know this. We had a major breakdown in our equipment just before we did this segment because someone doesn't want you to hear this, but someone wants you to hear it, and he's greater than someone that doesn't want you to hear it, all right? So, Obadiah, jam-packed with what's about ready to happen on planet Earth. John, give me a brief synopsis of Obadiah.
A powerful book, Sid, and it's about this ancient battle between the house of Esau, which today would be the Palestinians, and the Jewish people. And it documents what happened in history. Then there's a verse in Obadiah, verse 15, which says, "The day of the Lord is near upon all nations." That brings Obadiah right to today. The day of the Lord is the period of time around the second coming of Jesus Christ and when God judges the nations. And according to Obadiah, it says he's going to judge the nations for what they have done to Israel, how they have touched Israel. It's a fantastic book.
You know, the sentence that jumps out at me in Obadiah is Obadiah 1:15. As you have done to them, meaning Israel, as you have done to Israel, it will be done to you. I mean, you can't get any stronger than that. Right. But Obadiah actually shows the confederation of, I believe is it Psalm 83?
Obadiah and Psalm 83 tied together, and Obadiah is sort of the centerpiece. And when you understand Obadiah, everything fits together. Obadiah talks about an all-out war between the house of Jacob and the house of Esau, and none of the house of Esau will remain. It's all out. And that's what's happening now. We actually see in the Middle East this all-out war building up.
Now, what's going on in Egypt as you see it?
Egypt is turning, well, it's not turning, it has turned to become the Muslim Brotherhood are now in control of Egypt. They control everything, the president, the military, the parliament, and the Muslim Brotherhood is like Hamas, and they are sworn to destroy Israel.
Well, you know what's so amazing to me is when Morsi became president, he's with the Muslim Brotherhood, and I might add, they are welcome guests in our White House. I want you to take a look at Morsi's spiritual leader, and he's actually in the background. Let's take a look at this clip right now.
كل عشاق الشهادة هم حماس ونقولها من هنا من المحلة من قلب الدلتا من قلب مصر وليسمع العالم جميعا ولن نوري ولن نواري ولن نداهن. نعم هدفنا القدس، سنصلي في القدس أو ننال الشهادة على أعتاب القدس. الله على القدس رايحين شهداء بالملايين على القدس رايحين.
You know, it's amazing to me. John, did you read the same article I did? That they're actually, for people that disagree with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, they're having crucifixions, real crucifixions.
Yes, I absolutely read it. And this is the rise of like Mohammed Islam. This is the way it was under Mohammed. But notice the target, the goal of this is Jerusalem. They actually said in that clip, the full clip, that they're forming a caliphate, which is a pan-Islamic union, and that Cairo is not going to be the capital, but Jerusalem is going to be the capital, or they'll die as martyrs. So what's coming, according to Obadiah, is this all-out war